Hey everybody, I am in Harpers Ferry, West Virginia today, and I have had myself quite the morning, a day that has affirmed what I believe in how the universe works, how divine forces work, and how I live my life. I came up here today to go for a great long bike ride on the C&O Canal Path. And just yesterday, I mentioned to my wife that I probably shouldn't be making rides out into the countryside without having spare tubes and the proper equipment and knowledge to know how to change a flat tire. But I thought, if I ever have trouble, I just call an Uber. So I get out this morning and start enjoying the incredible autumn colors here along the Potomac River, and am immediately entranced and connected with the divine. I'm riding along and miss a little turn that causes me to have to go over an obstacle instead of around it. And as a result of the little wrong turn, I encounter another cyclist coming from the opposite direction, except that his bike is loaded with camping gear and everything else you can think of. And he's clearly doing the entire towpath from Pittsburgh on down to DC. I notice he's wearing a Buffalo Bills jacket and ask him how he thinks his Bills are going to do the rest of the year. And as so often happens when you meet a stranger, the next thing I know, 20 or 30 minutes have gone by and we trade life stories. Him talking mostly because I was much more interested in hearing about his life than in talking about mine. And he told me that he set out from Pittsburgh. He has been homeless and jobless for a long time by choice, he says, because he just doesn't want to be a participant any more than he has to in today's society with today's politicians and today's demands that are caused by trying to make enough dollars. So he rides his bike around here and sometimes just takes off across the country and believes that whenever he needs something, something will be put in his path or someone will be put in his path. He never asked for a dollar, never asked for a dime, but just told me that he hopes that as he tells his story about how he's been able to live independently and live freely, that it will inspire some other people. Certainly, it touched my heart, and I asked him a question, which was, "Can I ask you a weird question?" And he said, "Sure." I said, "I have a few dollars in my bag. I admire what you're trying to do, and I admire the way you're living, and I admire the strength and the fortitude it takes," especially after he told me about a bear encounter camping last night here on the path. And he said, "Sure." And I reached into my bag and gave him $60. And he started to thank me. I put my hand up and said, "No, it's not about that. It's just I try to put as much karma and good into the universe as I can when I'm called to do it, because my life has been a blessing and I'm very fortunate." And he appreciated that and told me stories about how when he was down to his last dollar, money has arrived. And that's been my life's experience too. I never worry about money because throughout my life, whenever I've been short, whenever I've been not sure how I'm going to pay the next bill or the next crisis, those dollars appear. And he said that he believed in God and that God is looking out for him. And I shared in kind that I also believe in what most people commonly call God. I may often use different names, the universe with a capital U, the Great Spirit, but it's all the same. And I asked him at the end what his name was so that I could remember him. And he said his name was Kenny, which happens to be the name of a long departed friend of mine who took his own life when we were in college. And I still think about Kenny every day. And his birthday's right around the corner. And I told living Kenny that I was very grateful to hear his name. I didn't explain the story in full. I just said I ride today in honor of my friend Kenny now that you've brought his name to my consciousness. And we took a picture and high-fived and wished each other a good life. I continued on the C&O path, continued in just really a state of rapture and meditation. I've been studying Hinduism a lot lately and trying to learn the various practices of meditation. Always been a spiritual seeker myself. I don't think anybody has all the answers, but that a lot of faiths have a lot in common, and there are a lot of good answers out there to be found in a lot of places. Hinduism just happens to appeal to me more than any other. It appeals to my intellect and my faith and my spirit. So I rode along, again in that trance of just enjoying this beautiful earth. And as I stopped for lunch 20 miles out and in the middle of nowhere, I couldn't even tell you where I was. Maybe my phone can help me figure it out later. All of a sudden, for no apparent reason, I get a flat tire. And I'm thinking, no problem. I'll just call Uber and get a ride back to Harpers Ferry 20 miles away, until I realized that there's no phone signal here. And then I got scared because I thought, ooh, I'm not sure I remember the last sign to a town I passed, and there's no way I can make it back walking 20 miles to the car. I mean, I could, but it would take me till the next morning. And in my panic, I tried to take a deep breath and calm down and look around. I saw what I thought might have been some godsend gas station up ahead, but it turned out just to be someone's house with a lot of cars in it. I am reluctant in a lot of places to walk up to a stranger's house, particularly in a place that might be really fond of its Second Amendment rights. I don't want to get shot. So I was a little scared to walk up to someone's house in a really isolated area. Plus, I can imagine the person on the other end. Yeah, sure you have a flat tire and sure you need help. But I saw this husband and wife in an exceptionally large SUV, and my little voice said, that's your only hope of getting out of here without an incredibly arduous walk. I flagged them down and ran up to them, trying to think of how not to sound like a complete stranger and idiot and moron and criminal. And I explained to them very gently my situation and asked if there was any possible way, and I would pay any price to get some help to get out of here. And they said, we won't accept your money, but we'll take you anywhere you need to go. And my new friends, Mike and Beth, let me put my big old bike in their brand new looking car. And they drove me a little more than 20 miles to get back to my car, which led to all kinds of conversations about their lives and what they're doing, Mike and Beth. And we shared stories about faith, me reconnecting with that greater spirit over the last few years. And at the end, I knew they wouldn't take my money, but they mentioned their church and a food pantry it runs. And I asked them if, instead of me paying them, they would allow me the privilege and the honor of making a nice donation to their church for their food bank. They said that would be wonderful. I said, the first check I write when I get home will be to your church. But the amazing thing is that I put into practice what I believe about doing good for good's sake with no desire for or willingness to accept a thank you from Kenny, because it's the right thing to do. Karma yoga, my Hindu friends would say. And not even an hour later, after I had given away my last dollar, I end up in a very unexpected need in a very unexpected place. And here come two complete strangers offering me the enormous kindness of a ride 20 miles back to Harpers Ferry. I am overwhelmed today by so many affirmations of living a life in which you do the right things because it's the right thing to do, and you're not expecting nor wanting anything in return. Days like today affirm my belief in a higher power, affirms my belief in the goodness of strangers, affirms my belief in the goodness of nature, which I've never doubted. But there was something special about spending so much time today among the trees and the orange and yellow leaves. Nature is always where I've connected with God the most. And today I got myself in a jam because I didn't have the right bike pump and I didn't have an inner tube and I have no knowledge of how to change a tire in the first place. Yet I've always known I shouldn't be out doing these rides in the middle of what some people would consider nowhere without those kinds of resources and that kind of knowledge. So I'll absolutely be taking care of that when I get home. But I end this morning in gratitude to Mike and to Beth and to their church and to Kenny for sharing his story and letting me hear out loud the name of an old friend. You just never know what happens when you put yourself out there in the universe and have a new adventure and open yourself up to anything that comes your way. Hopefully, you'll be able to help people along the way, and then in your moment of need, you won't be too surprised when someone like Mike and Beth reach out to help you.